Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Midweek Program at the J.C. Raulston Arboretum. My name is Blake, and I'm the Education Assistant here at the Arboretum, and today we are at the Visitor Center because it is a rainy, kind of misty day. It's the perfect day for a program about planting gardens, which is exactly what we have for you today. We've got our research technician, Evan Villani, here. We also are joined in spirit by our dear Sophia McCusker, our nursery technician. She is giving a tour of the nursery right now, but we went ahead and filmed her portion of this program, so we will get into that. We got a great program lined up for you. We're going to teach you how to plan out a new garden. Perfect thing to be doing on a rainy day like this, particularly in the autumn. We're already thinking about spring. It's important stuff. We want to get those ideas going now, so it should be a really good program. Those of you watching this on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to our channel, and feel free to leave a comment down below. And with the announcements out of the way, I will pass things over to Evan to kick us off with a program about how to plan your new garden.
Thank you, Blake. And I am wearing green today because today is a day for plants. This will focus on people with some space, and any amount of space is the right amount of space for a garden. That's what I think. So it's quite a lofty topic and it can be overwhelming. So I have a little slideshow that I will now share. Okay, so this is a very important topic to me. It's because gardening is a place that I have found my own happiness, and so I'm always looking to share and help people find ways to garden in their own yard. As Blake alluded to, it's around plants where we feel happy and in nature, and so if we can create that in our own backyards so that we don't have to drive all the way to the Arboretum to get some lovely experience with plants, then that's the best of both worlds. So planting a garden. Today's goal is to take something that's possibly overwhelming and to break it down into manageable steps. And with those steps, you can create a timeline, and you can also gain some confidence so that you can make your yard truly yours, how you want it, where you feel happy. You can take notes. That's a good place to begin. Does your yard have challenges, spots that are constantly wet or dry, places that get full beating sun or heavy shade? Is there any spots that have pure clay? A lot of people who have just moved into their homes, you're facing pure clay, and very few plants can grow in that. So, and you want to give plants their best chance. And then finding inspiration, come around here, walk around some public gardens, find pictures on the internet, drive around some neighborhoods and see some spots that houses like yours, what did they do with their yard? What kind of gardens did they have? And just remember that when you're brainstorming, that's a time to let your ideas flow. You can judge them later, but it's good to just get some stuff down on paper, and we're gonna get into that. So, we're gonna talk about why you plant a garden, how you plant a garden, and then implementing that plan. Why plant a garden? Because you like plans. That might be a reason enough. I love plans. Greg knows that. Because you like plants, and you need to give them enough space, the right resources, the right light, the right water for them to survive and be happy, because you love your plants, especially trees. So you can manage water, thinking about things like stormwater and grading on the front end before you have gotten into the thick of it and before you have a bunch of plants laid out in your yard. That's the easiest time to do it, to direct water flow and also to amend that heavy clay soil with some organic matter so that the plants you plant in that bed can survive. And lastly, so that you can take action, because I find it difficult to take action without a plan in mind. And so this might save you some future headache, some future stress. It gives you some direction to follow. We will now be switching over to Sophia McCusker's pre-recorded segment because she has a perspective that I cannot give you, which is that of a homeowner. She's going to tell you a little bit about overall strategy, finding inspiration, and how a garden changes over time. And Blake will get that set up.
Oh, you again. Today I want to talk about planting a garden and planning a garden. So when we first thought about this, I selfishly wanted to do it so that I could put some more thought into how I can put some thoughts onto paper for my garden, because I've been in my house for 7 years. And in that time, I've had a lot of life events. And my garden it's like it's like the saying with the cobbler's shoes, cobbler's kids. Y'all know where I'm going with this. They don't have any shoes. Well, my yard does not look like a gardener's yard yet. It's a work in progress. So I'm going to start with strategy. And I kind of see two there. We're going to talk about two ends of the strategy scale. So the first end is you can always do a large install. You can work with a landscape designer, a contractor, have them come in, fill in your beds, amend your soils, come up with a planting plan, fill it in, plant. It's all done. That costs a lot of money. And also, I feel like it's not quite as much fun. Part of what I love to do in my yard is, I call it chaos gardening. So I get wild hairs and run off and do something, and it's usually on the cheap and fun. But with that big install, we've got the upsides and the downsides. Some of the upsides are you get it done and it's pretty, and you don't really have to put much thought into it. Some of the downsides can be you usually use bigger plant material, which means you have more loss. Anytime you put a lot of things in, you're going to see more die back and more maintenance, because if you've got a whole area done at once rather than a little spot at a time, you'll have more maintenance, more upkeep, more paying attention to, or having someone come in and watch it for you. I like my strategy because it's my strategy. Which is one bed at a time, or one piece at a time, or one view at a time. A few weeks ago, I had the experience of sitting in my living room and seeing a hummingbird come to a salvia to drink from a salvia that I had on my porch forever, and I just threw it in the ground. I really didn't think about location until this summer, when I realized you can see the hummingbirds from my couch drinking off the salvia. So that was really exciting. And another perspective that I hadn't really thought of what do you want to see out? So what do you see from the road? What do you want to see when you're walking? What do you want to see looking out the window? I'm not one to put things on paper generally. I kind of, like I said, it's chaos. I have all these seeds and I throw them, but it's good to have a plan. I have a vision of, 5, 10, 15 years. I don't plan on moving. I really hope I don't have to move. We got all our stuff in the house. I don't want to get it out. But a couple of strategies I really like are, I'll talk a lot about Google Maps and just going to Google Street View, find your house. This works for the front yard. It's a little more tricky with a backyard. Or if you've got a lot of trees, this may not be a good strategy. But certainly taking pictures and printing them out, and I'm talking like full page. They don't have to be good quality. And just sketching out some of your ideas. I think Evan's going to talk about that and make some really pretty pictures. They don't have to be pretty. They can be ugly. They can be little stick figures. They can be swishy lines. It doesn't have to be pretty to someone else. If it makes sense to you, that's all you need. So get inspired. I have seen a lot of gardens. I like to look at, I've been to a decent number of gardens. Flipping through, we always have magazines. How do we always end up with so many gardening magazines? I don't know. But just flipping through and getting inspiration. Of course, there's Google, there's Instagram, there's a plethora of options, and find some styles you like. Kind of like the old school vision boards where you get what car do you want and what house do you want? Instead, kind of find your styles that fit right with you. And, you could do that as a Pinterest board, or go old school and get a poster board with a glue stick. And if you get overwhelmed, this is something that I have really taken to heart and tried to focus in on, is take a step back. Maybe this year it's only containers. Maybe this year all you do is annuals, and that's fine. That's still a garden. You can have a garden be something from the annuals on your front step or your back patio to, acres. Being able to take that step back and look at, okay, this is how we're growing. Another thing to mention is the difference between Google Earth and Google Maps. Google Maps is current, and so you can go in, you can see your street view, but Google Earth is a little bit more useful if you want to see what your site has looked like in the past. Knowing what your canvas has been, was it farmland? Was it trees? Was it what was it? Was it a parking lot 20 years ago? Like, what was it? I don't know. Google Earth is awesome for that because you can find satellite photos back from the 50s. Like, it's wild what you can find. And I'm sure it varies area to area, but I think it's super cool and interesting. And there's so much information that we have that is freely available to us. Google Earth is one of those things. Google Maps is also awesome if you live, like I said, on a street that gets driven by. So I'm going to look at some slides now. I really wanted to touch on this because this is actually my sister's garden. She bought a house in 2019, just a few years before that thing happened. And what I've got pulled up here on the screen is actually what her property looked like in 2017. You can see it's all forest. And then you can see just a year later, they've taken away all of that organic matter. The trees are gone and they're making way for a new construction. And then 2019, you can see the roads are there and they've really eliminated all the pores in the soil and taken away everything good. So it's really good to build on, but it's not great to plant on. Okay, so 2019, they go through, they've cleared trees, scraped soil, compounded the mess out of it. It's really gritty clay soil. A lot of people feel like clay soil is not good soil. It's really great. It just needs organic matter. So this is her yard circa 21. So shortly after she bought, it's all builder grade. It's all beds. Hers is the middle house here. But kind of what we can learn from those previous slides is what we need to do to start, which is building up the beds. Generally, new construction, they don't add organic matter. Or if they do, it's in the form of like triple shed mulch, which isn't really organic matter. It's not really available to the plants. And that's why you see a lot of death. That sounded really dark. I think that there's, I can't remember what the rules are, but there are occupancy laws that you have to have, I think it's 1 tree and 6 shrubs. So that's generally what's in new construction. Oh, and like 9, I think it might be 6 shrubs and 9 perennials. So that's why you see the standard 1 tree, 6 shrubs, and then 6 daylilies, which is great because then you can move in and you've got a house. But we can make it more interesting. So this is her backyard, which to prep it, so she kind of used the base of what was there with that builder grade garden and kept those bed shapes along the back of the house and added a whole lot of compost. I can't remember if she dug it out or if they just added on top. I like the strategy of adding on top. She's got an espaliered fig, which is a cool garden concept. She's also been to a decent number of gardens, and the espaliered fig is something she's always wanted to do. You'll see the banana will pit. I feel like that's a story, the banana. There's not enough room here for that banana. This banana right here. Thinking about how big things are going to get, realizing that plants don't always read the tags. Your life circumstances may change and you may not want to prune that akebia every single season. Or the banana tends to spread, and I don't know if it's by choice that she still has it. And it's really tempting to fill it all in, right? But as you'll see, gardens take time and patience. You can use annuals, use things that are short-lived to fill in those gaps so that it's satisfying and looks pretty and fills that need to not have so much bare soil. Use something that will fill in and be satisfying while you're waiting for some of these other things to kind of fill out. And then I've just got a couple, this is the next year, I believe. You can see the grass is really taken off and is creeping into the beds. Along the edge on that grill is still in that bed, but you can see the bananas doubled in size. I think this is the next year. Yeah, and it's starting to take shape with some perennials filling in, and you can see she's kind of got some annuals in here. I really like the saying, And I think it's pretty true of it. Plants take 3 years to establish. So they need a year to sleep, they have a year to creep, and then they leap. And that's true for most things. Not everything, because there are no rules. And then you can see, this season, as I said, leaped. It has really filled out. Her garden is really pretty right now specifically. She's got dahlias coming in. You can see the echinacea has really filled out. Salvia's filled out. So stuff, it really takes time and patience. And don't be afraid to play around. Plant things. If you need to move it, you need to move it. We always preach to, I know Mark loves to plant in smaller containers. I like a pint for perennials, maybe a quart or a gallon-sized pot for a woody, because smaller containers means there's less for the plant to support through that shock of planting, and you get a bigger plant faster than if you plant a big tree, which is crazy. And then I just wanted to share this. Again, this is just like a little postage stamp yard in a standard like little townhouse subdivision. It's really not a lot of space, but she's been able to get an amazing harvest, and she has spent more time in her yard than I do. So we've talked a lot about her yard. I'm going to talk about my yard a little bit and what I'm looking at, like what we're taking from these kind of Google images. But things I notice about my house from 2005 is that it's pretty much all lawn. Trees are much smaller. What is that, 20 years ago? Good Lord. There are some trees, so something cool about this is you can see there is still a pit from this pine tree to this day. This was 2013, I think 2014 it's gone. So in 2013 this tree was taken out, and there are still, the root system is still decaying. It was a big pine tree planted super close, it was close to the house. So that's another thing about these sites or the like older images, is you can kind of see what was there and how they've kind of progressed. Where I've got my garden and will be working in, it was lawn in the backyard too. And we jumped to 2014. So like I said, that big tree is gone. Something else to look at with these is you can see where your shadows are. So this is from March, and you can see the north side of the house is really dark. That's another tool I want to talk about is our sun calculator. I found two tools that I really like. SunCalc, which measures the path of the sun. You can measure out the path of the sun any day of the year, and what time. Like you can say, okay, I want to look at it at 3:00 on September 10th, and you can pull it up and look at where the sun is. Where it'll show you where some shadows are, and you can kind of look at where that changes through the seasons. Another point for this would be that even if your lot is super wooded, if it's deciduous trees, you can see your yard a lot better in the early spring or fall. After your leaves fall, then you can kind of map your site out a little bit better. But planning for where you have sun, different times of the year, you can plan out things like where you could plant your helleboards, your cyclamen, your spring ephemerals that will be completely shaded in the summer, and they get more sun, full sun during the winter. Tying all your information together, so you know where your sun is, you know about your exposure, what style you're going for, what you want to highlight. Is there any architecture that you want to highlight or you want to hide? That's another. A lot of people plant things to hide things, but being mindful of where things are going. You may not like looking at your air conditioner, but if you surround it by shrubs, then there's no airflow, and then air conditioners are expensive. You kind of mold that all together into your rough timeline and what your priorities are. For me, it's my front yard because I pull in and I look in it every day. The backyard, that's a tomorrow problem. You know, having that big picture, printing out your images, kind of mapping out where eventually it's going can help you come back and use it to build on and continue. I would point to my picture. Just imagine, Blake will put it in post. I'm gonna have my picture because I printed a picture out and I carefully drew on it, and then I forgot to bring it up here for filming. So you can just put that in right here. But the pictures don't have to be pretty, but if it's inspiring to you, or maybe you don't print it out. Like, that's the beauty of gardening, is it's all how you want to use it and what you want to do with it and how much time you have. It's yours. And if your neighbors think it's ugly, don't do that if you're in an HOA.
Okay, thank you, Sophia, who has now joined us over here on the bench, and she'll be back for the Q&A. I'm going to resume sharing my screen, and we're going to continue with my part of the presentation. And for this part, I'll be using the laser pointer. Whoa. So, how do you plant a garden? So this is geared towards, you've got a lot of space, and right now it's just some lawn, and maybe that lawn doesn't look so good. So here is our opening shot of a completely empty yard. Now, I'm sure nobody has this. As Sophia mentioned, every yard has to have something, at least a tree somewhere. So you've got some pre-existing conditions, but assuming you have this blank slate and nothing, no garden beds, what are some easy places to start? So if you don't want to think too hard, but still have a beautiful product, we have just sketching out some things based on the existing structure. So around the fence line, corners, the side of your yard where you want privacy. I even included a little walkway here. So maybe you want to think about paths through your yard to the door, the classic front of the house bed. Just simple things where you can start throwing plants in the ground, and then eventually you can expand out from there. Pretty simple. This is a more geometric design, and over here is a more curvy design. Just if you want a more formal versus a more natural looking bed shape. And this, there's a little tree too. So I went to a lecture with Preston Montague, and I was very inspired. He always talks about designing based on the experience. So this is about asking yourself the right questions so that you can set limits for your garden. Because like being creative is hard, right? So if you ask yourself the right questions, the answers will come to you. Questions like, how do I want this space to be used? How do I want this space to feel? What are the views of the space? Like, where am I looking from? Is it inside? Am I looking out of a window? Do I want to be walking through the garden? And how will I move through the space? What kind of pathing do I want? There are no wrong answers. You could want privacy. You could want a more open look, so not too many plants. You could want a spot to grill. You could want a spot to chill. You could want a shady place to read. You want a space to host parties. You want a space for your kids to run and play ball. You want to see something beautiful when you're washing dishes out the kitchen window, anything. And Blake, if you could put this link in chat, there is a really great resource. I think it's from Idaho State, posted it, but it's an 8-page questionnaire and design guide. And the first half of it is the design part. So it's a 12-step process to sketching a design for the space you want to fill. And the bottom part, which is honestly the part that should be at the top because it's the part you want to do first, is a questionnaire. It's going to ask you a ton of questions that get you thinking about what challenges does this spot face? How do I want this space to be used? Who is this space for? Things like that really help you narrow down your focus so that you don't see this whole host of things. It actually allows you to sketch a plan and think about what you want this space to be used for. And so I'm going to go through the example that they give in this resource. So they've identified a couple things here. In the backyard, they want to see something nice from their kitchen, and on the right side of their yard, they want privacy. So that's basically what they've done, and they do a little bit of writing in between this. And so the first thing that they're going to do is sketch out a functional diagram. So a functional diagram is a very simple bubble chart that says, what do I want this area to be used for? Ready? So at first glance, it's a little complicated, but to sum it up, you have an entry path to your house. You have mostly just space that people will be walking by here in the front. You want a little privacy on the left so that no one's looking in your windows. You want a little privacy on the right so that no one's looking in your windows and no one's looking at your kids playing around. And if you want a tan, you got a little patio, so some space to host people, more privacy in the back, and then what they call a service area in the back right. And then from here, they spend some time and they make a full plan with some actual beds sketched out and plants included, and I'm going to show that now. Again, a little bit overwhelming on first glance, but to break this down, they have listed out some plants that they have selected for the space. You don't need to do this at this point. Just having tree, large shrub, evergreen shrub, these descriptive factors at this point in the plan, that's going to help you later. Because again, like Sophia mentioned, this is not a do it all at once plan. This is a 5-year plan. So when you're shopping 3 years from now for that back left corner and you see the note evergreen shrub, that's going to be just about all the information you need. Evergreen shrub, about 8 feet max height. Those are the details you want to include at this stage. And you'll see they have their playground, their patio, a couple nice beds around the house to soften the foundation, but mostly it's still a lawn, and they've got this nice curving path where it's a nice natural bed space, and you can do a lot with this. And so now I'm gonna move on to one that I did just for myself for the sake of this, to show you that it's not super complicated. Like, you just wanna go for it. So here's what I want. I want a space to host people. I want a couple spaces to relax with me and a friend, or me and a partner. I want some grass for kids to play on. I want some veggies, some fruits, and some flowers. And I want a mix of some nice open views versus some shady areas. Sorry, Greg's being silly, I'm sorry. That's not on me. And I want as much garden as possible because you know me, come on, I work here, you already know. So based on these factors, I came up with this sketch. So the first thing I did was I said, what's the most kind of walking space I can include in my yard? So all these little walkways to the door, to a front patio, around the front section, to the back, bench, patio, lawn, vegetable beds, another bench. This is kind of what I want the layout to be, okay? I just took 15 minutes, I said no wrong ideas, then this is just one iteration. You hate it, later, at a different point when you have a couple iterations, just scrap this one, recycle it, or include a couple things that you like from it. So the next step, the second step here, is I think of a couple plant types, namely trees and feature shrubs. So those big elements that are going to impact the space around them the most and that fill out the plan really quickly. Oh, and again, you should focus on the places that you have ideas for. That means, although I'm showing you this big overarching thing, if you just want to take this one bed at a time and maybe sketch out like where you want future beds, that's fine. And then just focus on one bed and say, right now, I'm infatuated with this tree and I like this color, and do that. And just focus on one bed at a time. But here's kind of the second step that I took, which was to include trees, to include a couple feature shrub locations. Where are these shrubs gonna get, where do I want them to have full space, full light, full needs, whatever they need. And then I included a couple themes. So on the left and right, I have written border, and a border is kind of just small plants that lead up to big plants. That's a privacy screen and something nice. And then here I wrote statue garden because honestly, this is a little bit inspired from a house in my neighborhood, and they have a statue garden right in front of their house, and it's lovely. And then in the first 10 feet, nothing important, annuals, perennials, because that land is not officially yours. So yeah, that's kind of the process of sketching out a large sketch. And you can take elements from this and move on or start totally fresh. This is just getting a bunch of ideas out on paper. So let's talk about some landscape functions. Plants can do a lot of things, as I'm sure you know. They can make shade, they can be screens. The landscape itself gives you an area to walk through. The plants, when they're in flower, you can bring them into the house, make your house smell lovely, and it creates an ecosystem, so on and so forth. I have a couple more things listed. And the plant types and their associated maintenance. Trees will produce shade, can host a lot of wildlife, but need long-term maintenance and forethought. So every 3 years, maybe after the tree gets a certain height, I want to have someone come out and look at this to make sure it's healthy, to make sure it's not going to fall over onto my car, onto my children. Important things. Shrubs, very multi-use, as I'm sure you've seen around the Arboretum. A shrub is really anything. They can be used in hedges, screens. They themselves can produce flowers. It's a more structural element of the garden. Because it's woody and maybe it's evergreen, it's going to be there in the winter months when a lot of other stuff has died down. So placing shrubs in locations can help your garden feel full even in the winter months. Perennials die back in the winter, and their maintenance is the removal of dead material, occasional division, vines attached to structures, ferns create unique textures. Annuals have very high color shows in the full sun, and some reseed next year, so they're acting like perennials even if they themselves are dying. Grasses are another structural element that they brown, but they can also, you can keep them if you don't mow them through winter, ornamental grasses that is. Bulbs have a short season of interest, but a lot of pop, and they die back. And then finally, ground covers can be used to fill in space to reduce weed pressure. I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you right now, but I'm going to keep going. So here are two important things to consider. How much time do you want to spend in your garden, and how much money? And what level of tolerance do you have for things looking imperfect? And these two questions will help you shape your maintenance plan. And so here are kind of the 5 big things that you're going to be doing in your garden. And these are tasks, of course, but I enjoy these things, and I hope you would also enjoy these things. Or you could get somebody to do it and just enjoy looking at the garden. That's also very acceptable. Pruning. So pruning is a lot of reducing dead material from a plant, but you can reduce the amount of pruning you need to do by planning for a plant's full size when you plant it. Mowing. You're going to have to mow any turf grass you have. You can reduce the amount of mowing you have to do by reducing the amount of turf grass you have in your plan. Weeding. Weeding is a constant, unfortunately, but you can reduce it by mulching at set periods of time. We usually mulch, well, not here, but in home residential stuff every other year with like a triple shred hardwood mulch. You can also reduce weeds by using good edging. So edging that goes at least 2, if not 4 inches into the ground will stop grass and its grass roots from growing into your beds, because that is such a hassle and such a pain, and hand weeding turf grass is like probably one of my least favorite tasks. Removal of dead material, so that's everything that dies back, and by doing this you're going to reduce the fungal and disease pressure in your garden. And lastly, watering and fertilizing is something you're really just thinking about mostly on the front end when you plant things. Once they get established, except for periods of drought, you shouldn't have to do much watering or fertilizing. But it's good to plan this out, to know where are the hoses in the garden, or if you're older or your yard is bigger, do I want to run irrigation in any parts of the garden? And finally, part of your maintenance plan is leaving space for you to walk through to access plants. So leaving space to get to your plants is important. Okay, I am going to very quickly talk about the plant toolbox. This is a great tool. I'm sure I talk about it in every other midweek, but the NCSU plant toolbox, which Blake might throw the link in the chat for the 80th time, you know. So this is a tool that you can use to find a plant for your specific location. So once you've narrowed down a bed and a type of plant you want, this is a great resource to use. It doesn't talk about availability, but availability, this can help you get ideas when you go to your local retail nursery, when you go to your big box stores like Home Depot and Lowe's, and what do I want to buy? You know, so here are the things that are important. Light, and these are the different light conditions. Drainage, how wet is the area? space to plant might be important, but it's not as important as going down the list and selecting the type of shrub or tree you want. And then hardiness zone, this is important. You're gonna wanna check off 7B if you live around here, because Raleigh is like an 8A area. So if you wanna be extra secure, you just check off 7B, and that way 95% of your plant material is gonna survive the winter. That's always important. This can help in the design area. If you click landscape theme, this can help you narrow down if you want to do an Asian garden or a butterfly garden, if you have that kind of idea. And then plant type. Plant type is important. If you want a shrub, that's going to narrow down a lot of things. So I'll do a quick example. I'm looking for a shrub that takes part shade and will survive the winter. And actually this spot gets a little bit wet, so I'm gonna click moist. And maybe I want this to also be providing privacy. So it's still 200 plants that this is narrowed down to. So you could go through and play around with it a little bit more and find some more things you like. Maybe you want a specific flower color or leaf color. But this is just to kind of give you some ideas of, in North Carolina, what plants do well for this spot and this landscape function that I've chosen. I'm gonna get off of the plant toolbox and go back to the slides. So I find that tool very helpful. And lastly, how are you going to implement your plan? You are just a human being. You are limited by time and money, but you have all these ideas. That's okay. You're going to take it one bed at a time. And as Sophia mentioned as well, I think this is the best way to do it because it prevents you from also getting overwhelmed. When you install it one bed at a time, you can fall in love with it one bed at a time and give it the care it needs. If a couple things die, you do the replacements and you let it get settled and you feel settled with how much time you're putting into the one bed. And then you can assess, you can look at your overall sketch of your plan that you have and say, okay, if I'm spending this much time on this, how much time do I have to spend on the rest? And you might not see that right away. Sometimes plants might need more care and love, especially when they're just starting out. They need more attention, but once they get really big, you're going to need to prune them every so often, or as the other maintenance tasks I listed. So it's all about how much time do I have, how much time am I willing to commit to this, and finding a place where you're happy in your garden, because that's the most important thing. If you're not happy in your garden, if you're killing yourself over trying to make your garden beautiful, you won't make it beautiful because you're killing yourself. So finding that balance and doing it one bed at a time is the way to do it. And the last thing I wanted to include on this slide is that amending a bed, so bringing in organic matter, and grading a bed, if you want to affect where the water goes, affect your drainage, that's the easiest thing to do before you've planted anything there, because you don't have to move any plants. So it's implementing your plan, it's having this plan, a timeline. Okay, I can plant in spring and fall. I have my maintenance periods. I mow every other week. I prune once a year in fall. Having these little steps in place will help you implement your plan over time. And I think that's about it. Reminders, consistency is key. Yeah, Sophia's gonna come in for the Q&A. She'll get hooked up here as I go through the last reminders. Consistency is key. What I've learned while working here, it's the little bit of effort you put in every day that matters much more than I'm gonna spend 8 hours in the garden today, because it almost never works out in the long run, because then you get beat back by weeds or something is gonna beat you up. Enjoy the process. That's the most important thing. If you're not enjoying the process, stop doing the process. Reevaluate. Be patient. Some plants don't read the tags. Some plants get way bigger. Some plants take a long time to establish. It's just about understanding the plants and understanding yourself. But really, patience is key, because you're not in control of the garden at the end of the day. You're just the gardener.
That made me think of something. Looking up like patience, but also like looking up where your plants come from can help with like site selection. So if your plants are Mediterranean, rosemary, lavender, don't put them in wet spots.
Right.
That's something I like to do. That's not outside, not in the garden, but like preparatory.
A part of patience, you're saying, so taking the time ahead of time to research the plant, if you really want a specific plant, do a little research on where it came from so you're putting it in a happy spot. That's going to make less work for you in the long run because the plant's happy. And lastly, make your friends help you, but you will be expected to provide snacks. That's all I have for this presentation.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love how you said enjoy the process, because gardening is a process. Like, you very often see people just plop something in a landscape and then pay somebody else to take care of it, but it's like you're missing out the fun part of it. Like,
that's how I feel.
Yeah,
that's how
right.
I feel.
No kidding. So we did have a couple of questions that came in for both of you, and I love that a bulk of the questions that were asked you actually answered during your presentation later on after you had asked them.
Awesome.
But so you did mention leaving space for maintenance. Marianne is asking, what do you think about the idea of like a 5-foot non-combustible area next to the house for safety in the event of wildfires, or contouring the land for heavy rains? And she's saying this because she's got climate change on the brain.
Okay. Well, let's break this down. This is a 3-part question.
Yeah, buddy.
Number 1, space for maintenance.
Yeah.
To clarify that's about a 2-foot wide access path so that you can get in and prune behind plants, behind shrubs. And that's usually like against the fence line, against the house. There's 2 feet of space that you don't really need and you can't see when you're looking dead onto it, but it gives you the space to get back there and make sure that the things that are there look nice. Part 2, the not the drainage, but the non-combustible area. I have almost no thoughts on that. That's not something I've thought about.
Above my pay grade.
That's a California legislature question.
No
Do we
kidding.
need to be worried about wildfires?
I hope
Probably.
not.
The news will tell you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the western part of the state. I would follow, that's where I would look into your local government's guidelines and refer to them, because all I can speak of is Cary, North Carolina.
Right.
Raleigh, North Carolina. So I would look into your local places for that.
Yeah, I definitely think that there should be a 2-foot space between structures and plants, but I don't know about specific distances after that. And lastly, contouring for drainage. You kind of want, if your yard has wet problems, so you know that there's a consistent wet spot, you can either plant plants that like the wet, or if you want it to go somewhere else, focusing on the contours and the drainage. And just when you put in a lot of plant material and mulch, that alone is going to slow down water and help manage that stormwater. So
I think I would add to that, I think what she was talking about more was the torrential downpours.
Yeah, for
As we
sure.
learned about, carries mulch away.
yeah.
And can undo a lot of hard work. It's definitely something to consider in those early phases, because if you go out, in Raleigh, I don't know where this person's from, but like in Raleigh, we have summer thunderstorms where it will dump an inch in an hour. And if you go out right after that, or, if it's safe to do so during a storm, and look where your water's running, then that can kind of guide you into, okay, where do I need to think about for even heavier rainfall? Because water will take the path of least resistance. So
Yeah, a lot of yards have like the furrows in between the houses. So anything you can help to direct water that way with least resistance, if you like a dry creek bed or something that won't wash away stone materials, helping direct water into those furrows might help. But again, these are very specific. These questions have like specific and correct answers when it comes to specific sites.
And if you have questions like that, or you're concerned about that, I would definitely hire a professional to at least consult
Yeah.
on your property. Because I can give you general stuff, but I can't say, oh, well, this is how you should make your soils.
Every time. Yeah. Every time without fail, all soil should be like this.
No
Perfect
kidding.
parts. Sand, silt, and silt.
Yeah. You want 1/3 clay, 1/3 silt, 1/3
Right. Perfect soil.
sand.
Yeah. And then you want to pay to have all that trucked in, surely, because that'll be cheap. He said sarcastically. Anyway, let's move to the next question. So you did mention that the plant toolbox has lots of tools for picking sun and shade, finding plants that fit those specific environments. Sherry asked this question before you mentioned the plant toolbox, but she would like to know if you can recommend ground covers for full sun and for full shade that act as a green ground cover that can be planted through.
So like your less aggressive ground covers?
Well, if it's acting as a green mulch, you want it to be more aggressive.
That's right.
I really like Orangi. It's Origeron. I always think Orangium, but it's Origeron. I really like that. I have that in my yard. I also have strawberries that I'm letting take over a spot in my yard. It's called they're the white. They might be native.
Pineberry.
Pineberry.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on it.
I think you're right.
I think they're native. They have taken over my yard. I got a whole 2 berries, but I think I have fewer weeds.
I love ajuga. I've never had a problem with ajuga.
Ajuga. I know ajuga is on the invasive watch list.
Sure.
So I would just be mindful of it.
It spreads almost only through stolons, though, not through seed. Yeah.
Let's add another layer to this question, because the next question was, can you recommend ground covers to go under a crepe myrtle to keep the seedlings from coming up? So ones that do well in dry,
so those aren't
shade-tolerant.
seedlings probably coming out from your crepe myrtles. Those are probably root suckers.
Okay.
I mean, maybe, kind of, sort of.
I'd say there's a chance both ways. You can certainly get root suckers coming up from a crepe myrtle, but there are a lot of people's crepe myrtles are very seedy.
Okay.
My own personal crepe myrtle is not very seedy. It depends on your situation, but some people do have crepe myrtles being very, very seedy.
Yeah.
And I will one point that you made is go check out public gardens for some good inspiration, because there is a very beautiful crepe myrtle in our Japanese garden that has a sea of dwarf mondo grass underneath it, which is so beautiful. So that's just to say, go find a beautiful garden with beautiful crepe myrtles and see what beautiful ground covers are planted underneath there. That is always good inspiration with that. So let's do another question. Cheryl asked, does the toolbox tell you what plants to plant around certain trees? Because she's saying that she has several pine trees in her yard and many deciduous trees in her yard as well. So how do you think about planting under those kinds of things?
Screen share real quick again.
Yeah, I'll screen share. Let's screen share. So I don't think they have blog posts for companion plants, and you might find your specific trees there. I feel like pine is pretty common in North Carolina, so you may find that. However, what you might want to do is think about what conditions are changing underneath your deciduous trees versus your pine trees. So under your pine trees, you're probably going to have a more acid soil, correct?
Maybe
Oh yeah, for sure.
Dry.
More acid, that's right. Certainly on your big water suckers, you're going to have
It's gonna be dry.
soil drainage, at least occasionally dry.
And it's going to be evergreen. Under your pines is going to be shady all year long.
So yeah, so unless it's got a very thin canopy, you're gonna say you might say deep shade. You want to check. So if it ever gets direct light, you'll say part shade. But if it doesn't, you can say deep shade. No, almost no direct light. And I'm still on shrubs here. These are still privacy shrubs, so we've landed here. Now let's undo this and say our deciduous trees. That's a little tougher, right? So you're thinking about what can take more sun in winter is now what you're thinking about.
And I'll just throw back in the example of going to visit your local public garden. We've got a bed back here that is under very deciduous shade, and this time of year it is deeply shady. However, at the time of year when cyclamen and hellebores are doing their thing, it is full sun.
It looks like Greg wants to add something here. Greg, our cameraman for today.
Root competition.
Please elaborate. I saw your note on root competition, and I did not know exactly how you wanted to elaborate on that. So please come back.
I believe what Greg is referring to is water uptake. The bigger organism's pretty much always going to win. So for nutrients and water, mostly water is what I think of. If you ever go and try to dig under your oak trees, it's not easy.
It's hard.
It's hard, it's stuffy, so look at, again, what's planted go somewhere and look at what's planted under trees is our best bet. So
Yeah.
spring ephemerals or something I can't remember if I touched on.
Things that don't need water all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
So,
Yes.
when it's dry, they suck.
the
That's
question?
what we've seen in the contemplation garden.
was the question ground cover? I'm lost.
No,
We've gone.
the question was just under planting in general.
Yeah.
I think, have we
For
answered
sure.
the question?
Yeah, more or less. More or less. You gave them tools to investigate.
Yeah,
it
truly the
further.
gift that keeps on giving. Come here.
Yeah.
Come look.
So, Jared did have a question piggybacking off of that a little bit.
Mhm.
He's got a very large oak tree, basically with exposed soil due to lack of sun and lots of surface roots because of heavy clay.
Mhm.
So, how would you go about being able to plant into something like that?
So those, we're going to go back to plant small. And then also what we plant sometimes around roots are like epiphytes, things that essentially need almost no water, but can live in the ground. So
Yeah.
we have, like in the contemplation garden, Neolepisaurus, an epiphytic fern. In another spot, there's a carex, because carex are like unkillable. Not all of them,
Yeah.
but this,
And I would
this one's
say,
pretty
I would
unkillable.
say bare soil and heavy clay underneath an oak tree, that's a big red flag for somebody's removing leaves every single year when
True.
they should just let those leaves there that they can decompose into the soil, break that soil down and build up a good topsoil
matter.
layer.
Yeah.
Ooh, I
So,
feel
like-
like that was a trick question. Blake,
Yeah,
trick-
Blake caught that. That's a
Right.
great point.
Well, you did a great point with the smaller plants getting and all the ways to like get stuff established, and that's good in the short term. But like when you're thinking long term, actually fixing this problem, like building up the organic matter. So do both of these things at the same time. Continue to build up the organic matter always, and then in a couple of years, it'll be easy peasy to plant any and everything in and amongst those oak roots.
Right. That was a good catch, because this is about long-term planning.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, leave the leaves for sure. If you've got a nice oak tree, put its leaves back under it.
Leave the leaves.
Yes. Okay, so Catherine had a question sent to her.
Shoot.
She wants to know if you can use arborist wood chips as a base for a berm, or is it better to use soil?
Feel like this is a site-specific thing.
That's true. It could be a good thing to mix in with the soil, but I tend to avoid just using arborist wood chips, because if they don't have any organic matter, then you're going to remove the nitrogen from your plants.
Also, if you're trying to build a berm, that's also an organic matter. You want some kind of, if you're trying to truly build a berm,
A berm.
there's a technique called hugelkultur,
Yes, please.
What?
which is a German practice, I believe,
Sure.
where they use wood as a base, but it's not really meant to build a true berm, I don't think. It's sort of using the wood to break down and create organic matter over the course of time.
Yeah. It's,
Would you like to build a hugelkultur?
No, I'm just thinking that in the South American garden, there's a huge berm over a giant lower pedalum stump, so I wonder how it's going to change.
Okay. And I would say think about things long term here. Like if you look at our brand new barrel berms, those are meant to be walked over, meant to be driven over. You're going to want to put inorganic, like actual mineral soil underneath that, understanding that if you were to put wood chips at the base, they would decompose over time and your berms will sink and you won't, and then you'll have some
And erode in weird ways.
erode in weird ways. You'll have some stuck tractors and that kind of stuff. That doesn't sound fun. If you just want a little thing and you're understanding that it will decompose over time and
And
Yeah.
then you're adding more to it.
Exactly,
That
yeah.
that could be a technique.
for sure.
Depends how ambitious you're feeling on
Yeah.
your berm.
Definitely. Depends on if you mean berms or berms and what you want out of it, honestly.
Yeah. How long do you want the berm to last?
Like
Yeah.
for our berms, for example, are some clay that we got from a construction site. We used that to kind of mold them, and
Yeah.
then we added organic matter and stay-lite or permatil into it, and then mulched heavily with leaves. So that's what the base of our berms are.
Leaves. Not the base, on top.
Not the base.
Yeah, sorry. I just like capped off for a sentence and almost misinformed everybody about everything.
It's almost so we're almost
Catastrophic.
gonna have to delete everything.
Yeah, almost had to fire me just then.
Okay, well that that appears to be all the questions that have come in for the day. So thank you so much, Evan and Sophia, for pulling together this presentation for us. Thank you, Sophia, for joining us for the Q&A. We are glad you made it here in person.
I got one last little
What you got?
slide.
What you got, Evan?
It says we can't wait to see your garden.
Yeah.
Tag us on the Instagram.
Invite us to your house.
Yeah.
But we need snacks.
We need snacks.
Yeah, like Evan said.
Yeah.
For sure. So thank you all for joining us. We will see you at your house next week. You invite us over to...
We'll be having the midweek program there.
Yeah.
No
See us next Wednesday in your backyard.
Actually, we will be here next Wednesday at 3 o'clock. We will be talking about akubas with art director Mark. So that should be absolutely wonderful. Thank you all for joining us. We will see you all next time. Y'all take care.